Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Odyssey and Ink workshop hosted by Creative Writing Meetup and Educators in VR. This workshop is normally hosted by Laurel, but today I am continuing my Odyssey and Ink series. The mission objective for Creative Writing Meetup is to create a supportive and environment for writers to be creative in virtual reality. Oh, I have way too many things open on my desktop today. Normally the rule of the sandbox is everything is fiction, but since today we're focused more on learning than sharing, we don't have to worry about that too much. Upcoming. Today's workshop is editing. It started as one really big project. I've decided kind of at the last minute to split it into two. So today we're going to focus on professional editing, and next week we're going to cover self-editing. We're taking the 16th off, and then Laurel is going to be back with your regularly scheduled programming on the 23rd. October is our scary storytelling month. November, we are doing VR Rimo, which is going to be a whole month dedicated to writing every single day in virtual reality. I believe Laurel is scattering the time slots for that month so we can help get people in from all over the world. So no matter what your time zone is, definitely try to check that out and catch one of our meetings. December is another holiday storytelling month. The Odyssey and Ink project was created specifically by and for Worldsmyths. Worldsmyths is a nonprofit publishing organization headquartered out of Canada that focuses on educating writers, be they young or simply young to the art of writing, providing opportunities for publishing. We have a very diverse and inclusive community. And if you would like to support us, we would definitely appreciate it because we are very much a nonprofit in every sense of the word. The Odyssey in Ink project itself, for those who have missed previous episodes, is a comprehensive look at the writing process, starting from the very first moment of inspiration or planning to all the way through to what you should do after you finally publish. A lot of guides to writing stop at the moment of publishing, and there is actually a lot you can do after you publish to help maintain and build your career as a writer. Today we're doing part one of a two-part editing series. We're going to look at the phases of editing as I define them personally and professionally, and we're also going to look at finding a good professional editor, what you need to look out for, where you can find one, all that good stuff. So when you start looking for an editor, it can get very confusing very fast because there's a lot of terminology that gets used interchangeably, and it does not always mean the same thing to even people within the professional editing context. So it's very important when you go to hire an editor that you seek clarity on what exactly they're offering mechanically, and don't assume what they're going to give you based on your own understanding of the term they're using to describe what they offer as editing. That'll become a little more apparent here in a moment. My slides may be slightly out of so all of these terms you see up here behind me, developmental editing, substantive editing, content assessment, these are all different terms to describe different aspects of the editing process. And copy editing, which somehow got left off the list, is one of those terms that is particularly up for grabs, as it tends to overlap between the line editing and proofreading phases a little bit, especially with the increase in volume of freelance editors. Not to say anything against freelance editors, they're wonderful. I know several of them. But it does get very confusing. It's a little bit Wild West. So let's talk about the 3 phases of editing as I define them. So phase 1, this is the beginning of your formal editing phase. You do not want to start editing until you have finished your first draft, a complete story, beginning, middle, and end. The reason for this is because there is a lot of potential for change in the editing process, and even if you are a hardcore plan ahead type of writer, you can very easily end up wasting time putting a lot of energy into editing a scene that doesn't make the final cut. So you want to be very chronological in how you go about your editing. And I do want to be very open and honest here. I myself am a compulsive line editor, and part of my writing routine, just for an example, when I sit down to write, I will reread the last couple of pages I wrote, and as I'm reading, I will make small changes that are technically line edits and proofreading. But the 2 key things I keep in mind while I'm doing this is that, 1, my tweaks are not taking a lot of time or effort. They're very much in the flow of thought. And 2, the goal is to get myself into my writing headspace so I can write new words. It's very easy to get stuck into an endless loop of editing. So for phase 1, this is your developmental editing phase. Terms you'll see attached to this phase are things like substantive editing, content assessment, manuscript evaluation, and a whole lot others. What this phase is in actionable terms is looking at your piece, your written piece from a big picture perspective. If you're writing fiction, you're looking at things like character arcs, plot point progression, pacing, world building. If you're doing a specific genre, you may want to pay particular attention to genre conventions. Not that you have to obey genre conventions. It can be very fun to play with genre conventions, but you want to be aware of them if you're doing a genre piece. If you're a big planner more than a discovery writer, you might like to set your story up according to a story structure, like the hero's journey or the 3-act structure. And in your developmental phase, even though you've thought ahead to have that structure as part of your outline, you still want to take a moment in your developmental phase to have somebody confirm that you are hitting all of those plot points you think you're hitting. And this is what a professional editor can do for you. They will also look for things like plot holes or continuity issues in characters or in the plot itself, or in world building. If you have like magic rules established, you want to make sure you're consistent in following your own rules. Sometimes this is described as setting up an internal logic for the book and following that internal logic, and it can be very frustrating for writers if you break the rules that you have set up without very good reasons. If you are doing a genre piece and you're working with an editor, particularly one who specializes in that genre, they may want you to respect certain conventions or advise against certain subversions of certain conventions. So it's important before you get deep into the editing process that you both understand what you want out of the process and what you are both willing to accept. Phase 2 is line editing. In this area of editing, you're going to see a lot of services offered in terms of stylistic editing, prose editing, editorial revision, And copy editing is when you'll start to see that name crop up. Copy editing, as I said before, can straddle both phases, both line editing and proofreading. And see, it's very important you make sure you understand what your copy editor is doing mechanically with your work, and that you're getting those mechanics in at the right point in time. We'll talk a lot more about the actual mechanics next week when we talk about self-editing. So even if you're not planning to self-edit, don't skip that. It's going to teach you a lot about the mechanics so that you can communicate with your professional editor better. At the line editing phase, the mechanics, very briefly, you're looking at refining your tone, your style, your word choice, the flow of your sentences and paragraphs, and varying your structure to be visually accessible to readers. We talk about walls of text a lot online. You don't want a wall of text in your writing in most contemporary instances these days. It's not something that is generally accepted or popular anymore. Tone and style can involve refining, adding, or removing elements like similes, metaphors, personification, as well as other terms which you should get in any Creative Writing 101 class. I'm not going to go into detail about those terms at this time, but just keep that in mind. If that's something you don't know a lot about, that's an area of knowledge that you should work on expanding if you want to be a serious writer. Line editing also looks at things that affect general readability, but aren't necessarily punctuation oriented. For example, if your target audience is teenagers in high school, you're going to aim for a very different style of prose than if your target audience is, 40 plus, or within a certain genre or even subgenre where language can get a little bit jargon specific. Or if you're writing for an academic audience like historians, you're going to write with a very different expectation. Again, I just want to take a moment to emphasize line editing comes after developmental editing. I have seen a lot of writers, and I myself have fallen into the trap occasionally of doing line edits on a scene that doesn't even end up in the final draft. So especially if your money is tight, I would say don't skip developmental editing completely. If you want to do that yourself, come back next week. We'll talk about developmental self-editing and how to work around being too close to the story as an author. But absolutely just don't try to jump straight into line editing, whether you're working with a professional or not. Your story is going to suffer if you skip the developmental editing phase. Phase 3 is proofreading, and you'll see this offered under service names like mechanical edits or quality assurance, or some editors specialize in a specific style guide, such as the Chicago Manual of Style, which is, at least in the US, the standard for fiction writing. If you are considering a style guide editor, make sure that they are using the latest version of their style guide, as these do get periodically updated. Or alternatively, if they are using an older one, make sure that you understand what that's going to mean for your work and that you're okay with that. Copy editors will also sometimes focus on this phase exclusively, or they will blend it with the line edit phase a little bit. If you're getting a copy editor who is going to tackle both stylistic and prose level editing as well as grammar at the same time, you are probably going to pay a lot more for those editors because they're basically pulling double duty. If you want to avoid that, just remember to have that open and clear communication with your editor before you commit to hiring. With Worldsmyths, we usually do a minimum of 2 proofreading passes. The first pass is to just look for the grammar errors, the punctuation errors, the misspelled words, any unintentional rule breaking that hinders the reader more than it stylistically adds to the story. There are some areas of debate around breaking certain grammar rules with writing. Just as a single example, a sentence fragment is often used in fictional literature as a tool for emphasis or to build dramatic tension. But some editors are very much sticklers for complete sentences, and they don't want to see a sentence fragment even for stylistic reasons. This is just a personal preference thing, and you want to be aware of these little personal preference things before you commit to having an editor. Otherwise, you're both going to be frustrated, and somebody's going to be losing a lot more money than they wanted to. Whether you end up paying them and getting work that doesn't really help you, or you end up refusing to pay them and they've invested a lot of time and energy into working and aren't getting paid. It's not fun either way, and it's not fair for anyone involved. So just, I know I keep hammering it, but that clarity of communication is a really big thing I want to emphasize. Beyond these 3 basic phases of editing, there are also a few additional services you might see depending on what type of book you're writing. These are not going to be necessary for all books, but in some cases they could be just as essential as the other standard forms of editing. So fact checkers, for example, if you're doing hard sci-fi and you want to be super accurate with the latest scientific theories and discoveries, but you're not that great at managing that much information yourself personally, you might want to hire a science fact checker. Or if you're writing historical fiction and you really, really want to be accurate on some elements, you're going to want to look for a historian who specializes in the period you're writing about. With sensitivity readers, if you have a main character or a very important secondary character who represents a minority group that you aren't a part of, or even if you are a part of that group, you might still want to get some sensitivity readers. These are readers who have firsthand lived experience and can provide feedbacks on things like, but not limited to, race, gender, ethnicity, religion, and physical or mental health issues, as well as a number of other subjects that might crop up. What they will do for you is they'll read your story and they'll provide feedback on how your character's representation of their group made them feel, whether they felt it was done respectfully or effectively, and if it wasn't, why, and they can also have suggestions to change it. I cannot remember the name of the book, but it was quite a popular book that came out relatively recently, and the author had a uncommon physical disability, and they did not give their main character that exact same disability, but they wanted to give them features of that disability. And a lot of people who also shared that disability and read the book were frustrated by the inconsistent application of those features with the main character. I did not think of that when I was preparing for today. I apologize. That's just off the top of my head, so I don't have that title handy, but just as a vague example. with sensitivity readers, you can often find people who are willing to do this reading for free, but there are also professional sensitivity readers, and they are generally more experienced and tolerant, and generally speaking, a little more reliable in providing good, actionable feedback that won't necessarily disrupt the story or cause you to, have to make big changes at that stage. So if you are getting a sensitivity reader, you want to get that person in either as part of your developmental editing phase or even before your developmental editing phase. Technical or expert readers, if your story happens to involve a high degree of technical knowledge, such as, some kind of medical drama, and you don't want the real world doctors to just laugh at you, you'll want to consult an actual expert in the field. There is a whole genre of YouTube videos dedicated to people who are professional experts picking apart fiction authors who are trying to represent their profession and getting a lot of things wrong. You see this primarily with medical and legal representations, but other details can crop up. This isn't what I would call necessary editing, which is why I've packed it in here into the extras area. There are lots of very commercially successful books and TV series and movies and things that are not technically accurate to the fields of action or to the fields of knowledge they represent, like police dramas, legal dramas, space dramas, even ones set in a contemporary setting. Sometimes they don't get the reality right. But just be aware that if you have a piece that has that technical representation in it and you want to skip this step, just be aware you could end up in one of those YouTube videos. And on the one hand, that's free advertising. And on the other hand, some people find that very embarrassing and humiliating. So just be very aware of which side of the fence you're going to fall on for that with your book. I do also want to take a moment to talk about alpha readers and beta readers. These typically are not professionals, but as with sensitivity readers, there are people who do offer this service in a professional capacity. In most cases, when you're getting a good alpha reader or beta reader in a professional capacity, they are someone who has learned what to ignore when reading an early draft of a story and how to encourage a writer to build on what they already have without taking over and becoming a kind of ghostwriter or co-author. I have heard uncountable numbers of horror stories of both amateur alpha and beta readers and professional ones, and even people who weren't necessarily asked to alpha or beta read, but just kind of took it upon themselves to start, quote unquote, helping try and take over a written work. So if you end up getting someone like that, end up on their radar, just know that the absolute best thing you can do is block them. Just ignore them completely. If they're someone in your personal life that you can't block and avoid completely, just smile and nod and ignore and disregard all of their advice, because they're not going to be very helpful. If you do want a ghostwriter or co-author, I mean, that is a choice you can make. I'm not going to judge you for it. But just don't let someone else appoint themselves to that position for you. Your alpha and beta readers, if you choose to have them, should be people who encourage you to keep going. They should also be people who are interested in the genre you're writing and are open to the intentions of your story. Some authors find it very helpful to have a friend who won't nitpick the prose or world building, but you want to be careful having friends be your alpha and beta readers, friends and family, because for one thing, generally speaking, they're not professionally astute enough to recognize issues that could be seriously detrimental in the developmental editing phase. And a lot of times when they do recognize issues, they don't want to hurt your feelings. So that can be a problem of a completely different sort. But what you want to look for is someone who takes the writing in, asks for more, and puts a little bit of pressure on you to keep going. Some writers, this is part of their writing process. In the first draft even, they write a scene or a chapter, they share it with a friend who is non-judgmental and will encourage them, and that friend will pester them to keep writing and to write on a schedule. There are also writing groups that do this kind of sharing. Okay, so we've covered a fair amount of information. I want to take just a second to pause and make sure everyone is still with me so far. If you're muted, you can unmute yourself by hitting M on your keyboard. You can also raise your hand with the icon by hitting escape, or if you're using a VR headset with motion tracking, you should be able to just raise your hand. We got a pretty small group today, so if you want to just shout out, feel free.
I've never thought of the idea of someone who may have had lived experience and then just doesn't include every detail might turn off a reader that has a similar situation and then knows that they're omitting some aspects. Is that really common, or is that just that one instant that you were speaking to?
I'm only really aware of that one instance. As far as major commercial releases, I have also seen it done very well. The main complaint I saw with that instance was the inconsistency of it. It was some kind of joint disability where they were like hypermobile or something, and the character, like little things could cause them to dislocate their wrist, like clapping to applaud could dislocate their wrist. But then there was a very key action scene where the character was hanging by one arm or one leg off of a saddle of a flying dragon and not dislocating anything. And on the one hand, it's understandable that the author, you know, really wanted that rule of cool and the character doing something incredible and frankly impossible for a normally functional human. But it was very frustrating for readers who thought they were getting representation and then kind of felt a little slapped in the face with this character who was representing them and doing things that were absolutely impossible for them to do. So it was very frustrating, and I understand the desire to represent comes from a very good place, whether you are part of a minority or not, but doing it well is a controversial and difficult subject. Not doing it at all is a controversial and difficult subject.
Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Little bit, yeah. So it's go ahead.
I've got a constant problem with that because I'm colorblind and I have to keep describing colors, so I never know whether I've got it right or not.
Oh my gosh, I hadn't even thought of that. Yeah, that would be very challenging.
Yeah, I just Google things a lot.
That would help. Yeah.
Yeah, just it's impossible otherwise. Just, you know, the color of skies and things like that. So.
Oh yeah.
You could kind of assume, but you could be wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's really isn't it really important that is some information that an editor would need to know?
Exactly. Yeah. So if you had someone professionally editing your work, That would definitely be something I would bring up is like, you know, this is a personal limitation, and so you might see some things that are a little off. This is why you're seeing them. Just let me know where it's off, and I'll fix it.
And
Yeah,
I want to bring up something.
One example of that.
Yeah,
One example which I had was oh,
go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Faustian.
Well, I was just giving an example. One of the things I described once was the sky was the colour of bruises, and colour of a bruise, and it seemed like it was good in my head, but apparently skies don't go that colour, but they do in certain circumstances. So it's and
Stormy
I
skies. Stormy skies can be bruise colored. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Yeah, that was it really. It was just an example of something which I saw somewhere and so stole it, but I didn't know whether it was actually something that was credible. So
Yeah.
again, yes, it needs an editor to check that.
Well, the first thing I'm thinking of, and give me just a sec, Laurel, and we'll get to your comment. A bruise-colored sky. The first one that jumps into my mind is a stormy sky, like with tornado weather. It gets that kind of yellow-green tinge, which a bruise that is very close to its final stage of healing is going to turn that color. So bruise-colored sky. You just need the right context.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Narelle, what did you want to add?
Well, I'm not sure if you're going to cover this or it's a little beyond, but one of the problems that I have faced over and over and over and over and over and over again when I'm working with, especially newer writers, but every once in a while it will hit with some writers that are a little more experienced. Their defensiveness of what they've written, the protectiveness, tends to get in the way. And when you have somebody who's fact-checking or really diving into the editing, a lot of times you have to take into account a person's natural nature to lean towards anger as a first response. So if you're working with somebody who, not anger as in violence, but goes, yeah, I don't think so, as the first response, there's a problem there. So I just know from my own personal experience of doing this for way too many years, is that I have to tell writers, you have to get out of your own way. Editors are there to help you. They don't give a crap if you had a bad day or if your dad picked on you when you were a kid and they set off a trigger. They don't care about any of that. They care about the words. They care about the content. And their criticisms are not about you as a person. And so take the personal out, but also embrace it. Look at it as new information, like brand new research you just discovered. Look at it as light bulb moments and things to enjoy and celebrate. Change your perspective. If you are naturally inclined to be anger motivated or protective or defensive, things like that, because it's amazing how much I've seen amazingly powerful writers. I want to see their words published. I want to see their great stuff, and they get in their own way. It's really these people are here to help.
That is a great point, and it is not a subject I was planning to touch on today because I was mostly focusing today on how to get a professional editor and what you want to be able to discuss with them before you commit to hiring them. Also, how much you can expect to pay. That's going to blow you guys' minds, probably. But no, that's a really good point, and that defensive anger reaction is very common. And I've also seen, particularly among younger writers or people newer to the writing process, or just less experienced, less confident, where they'll have a depression reaction, and they'll feel like all these edits that they're getting are a commentary on their ability as a writer, and that they just aren't good enough, because if they were good enough, well, they wouldn't be all these things to fix, and that's just a straight up myth. I don't care how long you've been writing or how much money you're getting paid, your first draft is a mess, and your editor's job is to help you clean it up. the key thing there is your editor is your assistant, especially when you're paying them. They are a professional expert and an assistant, and their goal is to help you raise your vision to a higher level of, I don't want to say perfection, but to a level closer to the ideal. It's like words are limited, and we all have these incredible ideas that are almost impossible to translate into words. And visual artists have this problem too. In your head, it's perfect, but when you try to shape it into reality with words or paints or anything, it loses something, and it suffers, and it's often the creator will blame themselves for a lack of skill. It's just a fact of creation. In the act of taking something from the conceptual to the real, you lose something, but you also gain things. And so recognizing that is very important part of the editing process. Thank you, Laurel. Okay. So,
I suppose
what else?
I suppose there's another point as well, is when you would get an editor in, because if you're still after you've done the first draft, there might be a lot of changes that are still needed. So if you get an editor in who has to go through every part of the document, and then you're going to make major changes, you just have to repeat the process.
That's a good point. And there is a degree of looping that can be involved with editing, and you don't want to get trapped into that forever editing loop. And my friend Penguin, who is also part of Worldsmyths, she has this great phrase. It's called minimally commercially viable. And what that means is what is the acceptable minimum you want to achieve. You're never going to make it perfect. There's always going to be something you can fix or change or improve. At some point, you have to stop if you want to publish. So what is the minimal level of acceptability that you are okay with? And that's going to vary very much from person to person. So, okay. We've got the phases of editing. We've got what different editors can kind of do for you from a mechanical perspective. Let's talk about where to find a good professional editor, how to hire one. Where did my slides go? There we go. For finding an editor, if you're heavily involved in writing and have been for a while, it's hard to beat a good personal recommendation from someone you trust. So don't hesitate to ask around in writing groups before hitting up some of these websites like Readsy and the Editorial Freelancers Association. If you're not part of a writing group, I do, of course, always recommend the Creative Writing Meetup and Worldsmyths, of course. On the Worldsmyths Discord server, we do have a channel dedicated to hiring, which is called For Hire. And both people who are looking for services and people who are offering services can post there. We just ask that people not spam the channel. In addition to these formal writing groups and professional associations, you can also find good recommendations just looking around online at things like Reddit boards and freelance websites that allow you to see reviews and comments from prior clients like Freelancer and Fiverr. I do want to emphasize looking outside of a professional association. I am personally a big fan of the Editorial Freelancers Association. I think they do great work. Looking outside of a professional association like that does carry a risk of getting a lower quality editor, but it also tends to come with a much lower price tag. And the flip side of that, I want to emphasize, a professional association is not a guarantee of a good quality editing or a good quality experience with an editor. Personal compatibility does matter in this process. So just keep that in mind too as we start to look at the price points here. Another option for locating an editor if you don't have any recommendations or you're having trouble finding one is looking at the acknowledgments or editorial attributions in a book similar to your own that you really enjoyed. Many professional full-time editors have their own websites that you can look for online. They also have social media sometimes. There are also outside of the Editorial Freelancers Association and groups like Readsy, there are small editing firms that offer full editing packages. These are going to come with a higher price tag to a degree. So you want to be careful if you're going to be throwing down that kind of money. But they can also, with those packages, because they're an agency that specializes in this, they can also be a lot cheaper in some ways, rather than doing a freelance development editor, a freelance line editor, a freelance proofreader, for example. So I do want to take a minute to talk about the price of editing, because it is a significant investment. As if you're self-publishing, hiring a professional editor is probably going to be your biggest cost in production, even more so than cover art. Much like the terminology we discussed earlier with the different names for different phases of editing, pay rates in editing are not very firmly standardized, and this is just kind of a rough average. You'll see things much lower than this as well as much higher than this. But typically you will see either a rate per word or an hourly rate, and this is usually in US dollars. Project rates or editing packages that are a flat fee are a lot harder to find and tend to come with word count limits, range limits like under 2,000 or under 5,000, or for larger novels between 50,000 and 100,000. They can also come with a few other considerations, like you get around, I'm blanking on the word, forgive me. You submit the story for editing, they send it back to you, you go over the edits, and then you resubmit it for a second round of editing. Some editors will do that. That's not something everyone offers. So again, you want to communicate with your editor, make sure whether or not that is something they are willing to do, if they offer a special package for that or a discount, because that is them basically going through the work a second time. But hopefully it's much lower time investment on their part, so a lot of editors will throw in a free round of revision or even 2 rounds of revision. All of the numbers you see up here right now are based on current value of the US dollar as of August of 2025. So I know this is going to be going up on YouTube later. If you're seeing this in some future year, keep that in mind. Exchange rates and valuations can change a lot from day to day and with significant current events. So just be aware. The rate per word is the easiest to calculate and the one I see most commonly used, whereas the hourly rate and the project rates are a little less frequently utilized. And this can throw people who are new to the editing process off really hard, because 2 cents per word doesn't sound like a lot, but when you've got 50 or 60,000 words, it adds up to a substantial amount. The specific numbers you're seeing for word rate and hourly rate are pulled from the Editorial Freelancer Association's rate page. They also have a calculator on that page if you're looking to offer services. Very handy. And these numbers are averages reported by their members from 2024, so keep that in mind as well. They also cover a range of editing specialties. However, none of their members offer flat fee project rates for editing services. So for the flat rate column, I had to search a number of online sources and do some market comparisons myself. It took a significant amount of time and energy to get those comparisons. So do not be surprised if you see things outside of that range as well. And it is a much wider range than the other two rates. So for a 50,000 word novel, what this is going to come out to is anywhere from as little as $600 to maybe $200 or $300 if you get lucky finding someone offering a flat rate package. And that's going to be like if you're just getting proofreading at the very end and you do the rest of the editing yourself. And if you do decide to go with a professional editor for each stage, you could be looking at spending upwards of $15,000 to $20,000 by the end of the process. I can't speak for the highest tax brackets myself, but for most of us, that is an extremely serious amount of money, which is why I keep saying it again and again, and I'm going to keep saying it again and again. Make sure you are communicating with your editor. Make sure you know what they're offering and what you want so that you can get your money's worth and they're not getting cheated. Excuse me just a moment while I wet my throat. Not sure why my throat's so dry today. I'm going to blame fall allergies. When you have found an editor you want to consider hiring, I recommend taking the time to look into them a little more deeply just to avoid getting scammed. There are a lot of people out there who are acting like they know how to do this professionally and just feeding the books into AI systems now. And that's going to be very apparent very quickly if they're doing that, because the AI does a terrible job at these sorts of edits. It's somewhat reliable with grammar, but still not as good as a professional. You also want to be careful the first time you're working with someone, especially if you're not getting a personal recommendation. So I've talked a little bit about asking people to discuss the technicals of their expertise as a way to check knowledge. There are also other options for knowledge checking in this case. One of the things you can do is if they have a college degree in grammar or of the language you're looking to publish in, or a degree in literature, or even a degree in editing specifically, or certification through a professional organization, you can contact the university or colleges directly to confirm that they did attend and did earn the degree they claim to have. So that's one way you can hedge your bets. Some certifying organizations also keep professional registries that serve a similar purpose. And some of this stuff you can find online. Sometimes you have to call a number and speak to a person to get the information. For a track record of professional experience, You can get confirmation on this through something like professional credits on published works that they've worked on. If they have a social media account that they're working on building up, they should have responses there from previous clients. Or they might have a period of employment with an agency or traditional publisher. You could inquire about that. Talk to your prospective editor. Have that personal exchange before you commit to hiring. You can do this via email or phone or video chat, whatever you and they are comfortable with and agree to. Be on the lookout for editors especially if you're looking at freelancers, but also if you're looking at small agencies. If they are being pushy with you, trying to get you to commit and pay fast and upfront, that is probably not someone you want to work with as an editor, or just generally speaking in any industry at large. Make sure you establish that baseline of understanding of the mechanics, and respect what terms the editor prefers to use for what they're offering, but don't hesitate to have them clarify the actual nuts and bolts of the service they're offering. And again, next week we're going to go over self-editing, and if you want to get a professional editor, those checklists are a great way to confirm those mechanical elements of what the editor is going to be looking for in your work, if you're not sure yourself. Part of the personal exchange can also be a writing sample. This is extremely common among the freelancers, and most are willing to do a sample edit of 500 to 1,000 words. If they aren't willing to do a sample edit, that's probably someone you don't want to work with. Not necessarily, but probably. Also be aware, some freelancers do charge for their samples. The fee is usually very nominal and deeply discounted from their standard service prices. This is mostly just there to discourage people from sending in work piecemeal to try and get free edits, which I know that sounds kind of crazy and paranoid, but it does actually happen. Be nice to your editors. They get some bad treatment sometimes. Once you've found an editor, in most cases, but not all, I advise against paying more than half upfront. Exceptions would include a professional agency with a strong track record of service going back a few years, preferably longer, or an editor with a significant number of verifiable publication credits. Do be careful of impersonators if you're going that route. With freelancers and a lot of working online with no face-to-face contact, again, that's why I advise against paying more than half up front, because even if you are cautious and careful, sometimes you can get taken advantage of by a scammer. I also recommend, if you're doing work with a freelancer, to get a service contract. Do that as part of your upfront personal exchange before any money changes hands. And I'm going to flip perspectives here a little bit and talk about things from the editor's perspective as well for a moment. For the most part, people on both sides of this kind of freelance service exchange understand that getting ripped off is a legitimate fear, and they are just trying to protect themselves and avoid getting burned. That said, there are some professional freelance editors who do require payment in full and upfront. That is a personal choice. It does not mean they are fake or trying to rip people off. They have their reasons. And usually it's because they've been ripped off too many times. And they very typically, if they're making that choice, they're aware that it's going to drive a lot of people away, and they'll have some good, solid credentials to help prove that they are worth the investment. So be aware of that. Some editors will bring up a service contract. Some do not do this as a standard feature. So if they don't offer a service contract, ask for a service contract. This is for your protection as well as theirs. From the editor side of thing, a very good friend of mine, when she started editing professionally a year or two ago, got cheated out of about $3,000 worth of editing work. She was doing line edits for someone, and she did not have a legal name of reference. She did not have an address. She did not have a phone number, and she did not have a contract other than a simple verbal agreement via text. So without that information, there was no way for her to pursue charges to get that money back. And so I just want you to be aware from the editor's perspective and side of things. That is why some of them will want personal information like name and address and phone number as well as email. It's because they've probably had an experience like that, or they've heard the horror stories and they're just being very careful.
I've actually got like that
Mm-hmm.
for blog work inside of my early days, like literally like that first year. My second year doing it, there were some big changes.
Mm-hmm.
big changes.
Ouch.
Yeah, I've been ripped off a couple of times doing freelance
Yeah,
work
it's
for
very
a couple
real.
hundred. It's very frustrating.
Oh yeah.
But that is all we have for part 2. Next week, we're going to look at self-editing and how to do your editing yourself if you can't afford an editor, or if you just, for some personal reason, don't want an editor. And even if you do decide to get a professional editor, those checklists are going to be very helpful for having that mechanical nuts and bolts kind of reference material for what to ask your editor to do, and when they're telling you what they're offering. It's something you can look at for reference. So don't miss next week if you're looking at editing. Any questions?
Are there, so there's the Chicago Manual of Style. I work with APA all the time. Yes, they applied psychology, whatever it is. It's like a standard for academia. Are there some? Yeah. Are there some other style guides besides Chicago for more fictional writing?
Chicago Manual of Style is the main reference for fiction writing in the U.S. Some publishing houses have their own personal style guides, and I know a couple of independently self-publishing authors who have their own personal style guides, where they do all of their own editing in-house, like they're their own one-person publishing house. So you can have a custom style guide. Do be aware that there are some YouTubers and booktubers and book talk personalities that will reference the Chicago Manual of Style or other manuals of style, or maybe even their own personal manual of style, and maybe nitpick at your book on grammar or something to create content. It's just a thing that's out there.
Are you going to cover next week? You're going to continue on with editing, right?
Yes, self-editing.
Okay. Are you going to talk about how to create our own style guide?
I don't have that written into it, but since we're splitting it up this way, like I said earlier, we decided to split it up kind of at the last minute. I'm glad we did, because this did take the full hour just going over the professional editing stuff. So I can add that.
If it's important, if it's relevant to it, because that's something that I do with everything I'm working on, because it's not just genre, it's kind of industry based, and I'm doing one in the future where people's names and the references that they make to the industry that's being fictionalized and talked about has evolved from today into the future, as things do. So I have all kinds of naming rules and different words and things, just to help the editor to understand what's being talked about, as well as possibly writing up something that helps the reader understand what's being referenced.
Oh, okay. It sounds like you're talking more about a world guide than a style guide.
That's a little of both.
It is
Because-
a little of both,
yeah.
because the world guide is extremely helpful in the line editing phase. Yeah, I do talk about that.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah, if you don't have a world guide, you will be creating one if you decide to do your own line edits. You just kind of have to.
Yeah, especially if you're dealing with fantasy or with future fiction or even past fiction. I know our friend Nancy's working on a historical story, and she has a whole guide of words that are that were common in those days, but they're not today, and different usages of words. I had one a second ago that I was going to give as an example, but words evolve. Like when we, for example, okay, here's my example, is when we say, oh, well, that's bad, we mean it's good, right? That's a weird, modern, very modern twist on a word where bad meant bad, and now bad means good. And that's important when you're writing something that's historical, to make sure that the context of words matches our understanding as well. So, a lot of those for editors, a lot of those for word building, but it makes it complicated, and we got to uncomplicate it for people. I think I just complicated it out.
No, but it's a good point. Works of fiction, even if it's a contemporary piece set in the present day, in no magic or anything, no sci-fi, no secret agencies, it's still a complicated setting. You need to track your characters, you need to track your locations, and that's just the bare minimum for continuity checking, which is part of line editing. So that's a good point. Yeah, we will definitely be talking about that a bit next week. Let's see. I guess I'll go ahead and wrap it up, because doesn't seem like anybody has too many questions. Is it everybody got the resources down if they need it? I know my Worldsmyths Discord server link is ugly. I have not yet made a pretty one like Laurel has for writing VR. If you want to use the discord.me/writing VR thing, I am in both servers. I'm Tangwystle. You can poke me over there, and I can send you an invite to the Worldsmiths server if that's easier too. So that's also an option.
You say that using AI for editing is really bad, but it does have some function. You can still pick out the good bits. I have used it, and there are. It's pretty obvious that it is AI, like you said, but there is some merit to using some of it. You can pick
absolutely.
out the good bits and then throw away the stuff that's useless.
Right, and if you're a more experienced writer, that's definitely an option nowadays. I would just be very cautious with less experienced writers or younger writers. They might not be able to discern what's good advice from AI from what's bad advice. So
it's good for things like finding capital letters in the wrong place, or commas and full stops, that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, it's very good if you tell it to look for something specifically. It can find every instance of that. That is something it is wonderfully excellent for. But yeah, so next week we're gonna do part 2, self-editing. Lots of good information there, even if you're not choosing to self-edit. September the 16th, we're gonna be taking that day off, I think. I think we agreed to that.
Maybe I thought you were going to do your Q&A.
Or it'll be a Q&A thing. I don't know.
Yay, it's easy.
Get in the Writing VR server. Join us in the Creative Writing Meetup server hosted by educators in VR on Discord. That is the best place to keep up to date, as we sometimes flail and figure things out last minute. What is not last minute is definitely September 23rd. Laurel is going to be back full time, leading with all of her brilliant, beautiful AI art and lessons. And Um, um, I feel like that came out a little bit backhanded sounding. I'm sorry. I did mean that very seriously. I am jealous of how pretty your AI art pieces are that you feature in your lessons, because they're really pretty. And I was trying to do that a little bit today with this one, and it just was so hard.
No, yeah, I'll tell you a trick later. It's not hard.
But sorry. October, Scary Storytelling Month, and I'm not sure what lessons we're going to have planned, but they will be very educational and fun, because Laurel is always educational and fun. November, VR Rimo. Do not want to miss out on that. We're going to be doing virtual reality, a full month of writing. It's a great way, if you haven't started your novel yet, to start your first novel. December, more holiday storytelling. I think we might have 2 storytelling sessions in December. Laurel? So we were talking.
No, in October.
October is 2 storytelling.
Okay. No, there's 1 storytelling. I thought we were going to do a second, but it's not going to work. But we have 2 in December. One is reading stories that have already been written and published. They're traditional ones. And December, right, which is the holiday, all of the holiday. I mean, there's some wonderful stuff from around the world that we're going to be sharing. So it's an international holiday storytelling. And then the other one in December is going to be your original stories. So get working. I know Fustigator's got some, and I know Steph's been kind of poking at some stuff. And when we say holiday storytelling, it's wide open. I mean, I have the famous story of my brother at 2 years old climbing the Christmas tree and crashing it down with all the antique, things crashing and stuff like that. It's a famous story in our family. And he's continued destroying things ever since. So that was set a standard.
Goodness.
And especially things you care about. But anyway, but it's also about the food, the family, the traditions of going to, candlelight services or just being quiet on that day, or something that's from your past. I don't care. It doesn't matter. It's wide open, but it has to touch on something that has to do with the holidays. And holidays are kind of like all the different holidays, not just Christmas holidays. It's kind of wide open. And we've had some brilliant ones in the past, and anything goes. Please try to keep it to 4 to 6 minutes. I know Fustigator's begging for a longer one. Steph's begging for a longer one.
I'm begging for a longer one. 5 minutes is hard to do. It's so short.
Very, very hard, yeah. But we want to make sure there's time for everyone. So I'm trying to cap these at around 6 minutes, because I want to make sure we have an hour. Everybody has a fair chance. But it's magical. It's storytelling as part of the history of our culture and our language and everything. And holidays are the best time for storytelling. So we're going to come join us. It's going to be, even if you just want to listen, it's really fun. But I also expect y'all to do some work.
I might
get out of whips.
I might write a fictional holiday story for the holiday storytelling one.
Absolutely.
And expand on one of my many worlds.
Yeah, it's something fun to play with. So play.
Okay. Details for VR Rimo, just a little bit of extra. I mentioned we're going to do 30 days. Traditional goal is 50,000, but you can also set your own personal goal. We're going to be, she's going to be doing things in both VR chat and in Engage XR, which is where we're here right now, Engage, recording right today. There's going to be prompt sessions, speed writing sessions, writing games, and just a whole lot of social support, which we all need sometimes.
Yeah, so the meeting next week after, this is an old poster. Everything has been scheduled. All prompts are set. Everything is ready in both VR chat and Engage, and we're going to be using this same space. So we're going to have a lot of fun with it. But it is all set, and an article on educatorsinvr.com with all of the dates and times and stuff has been posted. So I'm going to be posting it in a few minutes on our Discord, so please share. A lot of people don't know that NaNoWriMo was one not happening, but VR Rimo is here to help kind of replace it and keep that. We've been doing it for years, so we're experts at it. We just changed the name, and it's really it's such a great thing. And we're also going to be doing, I'm going to be doing a presentation on explaining VRIMO coming up in a couple of weeks, and also a live demonstration of Scrivener is also coming up. So we've got some great fun.
I have so many people
stuff.
interested in that one over at Worldsmyths. I have to keep reminding them that it is coming up for you.
Yeah, and I'm going to be showing some new fun tips that I've been picking up recently as I've gotten kind of, anyway, it's going to be fun. We have,
Excellent.
and also we have another session on the art of the prompt, which is part of what VRIMO is about, is working to prompts, or really prompting yourself, but looking at some structural formats. We're going to be doing 2 sessions on storytelling craft and art of the prompt before VRIMO to really get you jazzed up. We got so much. I feel like I'm a barker at a fair. We have so many cool stuff for you. Just come on by. Used car salesman, writers. Here we go.
So don't miss out. Creative Writing Meetup. These are our times around the world every Tuesday or Wednesday if you're in Hong Kong or Sydney.